Hi, I'm Amy, Head of Learning and Development and Support at Roundtable. Get blown away if you're in Johannesburg and or Durban that you took a little quick step outside for some fresh air. And can you believe it, Martin? We are in the last week of July. I cannot believe it. So this is our last session for Credit Thursdays in July, and now I feel a little different, and this is deliberate, but for the whole of July we've been building up a picture around the credit cycle and the numbers and what sits behind those numbers. So today we're going to be not going to be teaching you something of a new concept that we've been going through this whole time, but rather to look at your actual numbers, to raise this as a discussion with us. And so don't feel uncomfortable to ask a question about when we say, how does yours compare? We want to learn from you. We have such an opportunity where we have 45 people on the call right now or just went to 46 people, where we're all in this industry. We're all, trading on credit, and this is our opportunity to talk to each other and to find out where are you and to open up that platform. And I know this happened long time before my time, but where there used to be conferences before COVID where credit personnel's, CFOs, financial managers would sit together and have these kinds of conversations. And so unfortunately, it's now an online thing and not an in-person thing for now. Maybe we can look at an in-person thing at some point. But this is our time to talk about it. So I'm going to be taking you through the benchmarks myself today, and then Martin will join me on the open floor. So between the two of us, there is very little, in the credit space that we have not yet seen at this point in time. So we're hoping that we can have a look and see what's going wrong, what's going right. So for the second half of the session, it's genuinely your session, as in everyone that's on this call. So get your throat warmed up and ready to have a conversation with us. So one housekeeping note before we start, that there is a scoreboard that we're going to post for you in the chat for you, which is a small Excel spreadsheet with some boxes on it. And as we go through each benchmark, you can fill in your numbers if you want, or you can just talk about it as well. Okay, so let's begin with where we are. So how the session works, let's just talk about how our next hour looks. And so for the next 35 minutes, I'm going to be walking you through the benchmark data on the 4 credit numbers that we're going to look at, that we focused on in July. I will try to keep it very brisk. And then at around 35 minutes mark, the slides are going to stop, and we're going to open up the floor where Martin will join me for the different points, for us to take on whatever you throw at us. So that will be for around 20 minutes, and then we'll pull back together for us to have a look at some of the takeaways, and that will be finishing up just before 11. So the scorecard is what you really want, which I will post for you just now, and just a small Excel spreadsheet. So every time a benchmark goes up on your screen, you can put your own numbers right next to it if you want to. If you just want to write it down on a piece of paper and then we talk about it, that's also okay. So it's just going to be open up onto the floor. If you do want to, just raise your hand and then we'll unmute you, or allow for you to unmute yourselves. Okay.
Can I just say something quickly, Amy? So when you guys see a benchmark, remember one thing. Benchmark is a benchmark. Depending on which industry you're in, depending on where your company is based, depending on who your buyers are, all of these things could change your benchmark. So don't compare yourself with the benchmark and then say, oh, I'm so bad, or oh, I'm so good. The benchmark is to give you a guide and to say this, for instance, let's use a DSO as a benchmark. If the DSO benchmark is 30 days because your terms are 30 days, then don't feel bad if yours is 49 days because you are predominantly dealing with government organizations. Immediately, the driver of the benchmark is the buyer, and the buyer has got a behavior, and the behavior controls the benchmark. Okay? Happy?
Okay.
Let's go.
Yes, absolutely. And it also gives us, something to work towards. And so that's quite important as well, to say that, even when we're looking at it from a support perspective, say what is considered the benchmark, what's the best of the best of the best, and then what are we in comparison to, and how do we then work quarter on quarter to get to that ideal standard. And that's what we want to be working towards. For some reason it doesn't want to allow me to post that spreadsheet into the chat, so I'm just going to pop that to you, Neil, and see if you can figure out how to get this to everyone in the chat.
I don't think it'll let us because they're not in our organization. So you can't share
okay,
files.
we'll just have to share our screen when it comes to it. Okay, no problem. We'll make another
Neil, in yesterday's meeting that we had with one of our clients, they were able to share a spreadsheet in the chat.
Brilliant. Let's give it a go. Amy, if you can send that to me, I'll give it a try.
They shared an Excel spreadsheet in the chat, and it was usable.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
It might
I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
Okay, we'll have a look. It might just be because it's a webinar and not a normal meeting, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so just a quick recap before we start comparing anything, because these 4 numbers are the ones that we're going to be looking at from a benchmark perspective. The first one is the DSOs. So that's where we are over here. DSO stands for Daily Sales Outstanding, and this is your speed number. So how many days on average between raising an invoice and the cash landing in your bank, that is a DSO. So it is the number that your financial manager quotes when he goes to the Exco meeting, and it is the one that everybody obsesses over as well. So that is that DSO question over here. Number 2, we have the CEI, or the Collections Effectiveness Index, and this is the quality of the number. So first we spoke about the speed, and the next we're speaking about the quality. So of everything that was realistically available to collect in this period, what percentage did you actually get? And here is why I like it more a little bit than the DSOs, even though I know we like to talk about DSOs a lot. DSOs can be flattened by a big sale in the month, that got paid on time, whereas CEI cannot. If your sales double, which I hope that they do, your DSOs can drop while your collections team does nothing differently. Whereas your CEI keeps them honest to say, what did we actually say we were going to collect before that one big deal, and what did we actually collect? The third is the overdue percentage. So this is when on your aging profile, this is your risk number. So it's not just how much has gone past the terms, it's how much or how far did it go past those terms. And this is the world of difference between 200,000 Rand sitting in 40 days and 200,000 Rand sitting in 20 days, because of those costs that are associated with it. So one is a admin problem, and the other one is very close to becoming a write-off. And a write-off is real money that came out of your business that is never coming back. Okay, so that's very important. And the fourth one is that collections ratio. So this is the effort number. So it is your monthlies rather than your annuals, your cash that you collected measured against the overdue balances that you stated within the month. It is the number that tells you whether last month was actually a good month, as opposed to whether or not last year was a good year. So we are looking at month on month. And again, this is where we're going to want to be improving month on month. So the real reason I'm labeling them as speed, quality, risk, and effort in this particular way is because I see that teams pick one number and that's their live or die by it. So usually it's the DSOs, and you can absolutely have a beautiful DSO and a nasty aging profile. So hiding it underneath them, is very important. And you can, sorry, my son is coming to my room to ask to play games, and I'm saying, no, No. No. Okay. So then we want to read them together, and individually they can make what, makes it look good. And together, it can be very hard to fake where you actually stand if you're looking at all four. Okay. So let's jump on into that. So I see Neil said we are unable to share it with you. So I'll just share my screen when the time comes. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 rules of benchmarking. So there is a common misconception that I want to clear up before a single benchmark goes onto the screen just now, because it changes how you use everything that follows going on from here. So people tend to, and as Martin stated at the beginning, they use benchmarks like it's a school report. Above average is good, below average is bad. And that's not really what it is. A benchmark is a question. It's not a verdict. So if your DSO comes in at 65 days and the published range for your sector of what's normal is 45 days, this is not necessarily a fail or a below the benchmark. This is the prompt to go and find out where and why did somebody have an extra 20 days up on us? What are we doing differently or incorrectly that doesn't allow us to reach that same benchmark? So as I said before, it's the target, it's the blue sky, it's the what does perfect in our environment look like? And to say if we're not on that level, then this is where we need to put in our effort. This is where we need to put in our work. Okay, so this is the prompt to go and find out what the extra 20 days is made up of. And it might be that you have, 3 very large customers that have negotiated longer terms with you, and that, this is entirely deliberate. And so that is why. It might be that your invoicing is going out 4 days later every month than somebody else within your industry. So if you're sending them out on exactly the 30th versus the other team who's sending it out on the 25th of every month, is that causing the delay because you miss the payment run of your customers, and therefore that delays them by an additional week. And so these are the types of things we want to start looking at. And it might be that that these are wildly different problems for each one of you, and that the benchmark cannot tell you which one you have. It only tells you where to start looking. So it highlights for you what is industry, where am I? Okay, and obviously industry is important because I can't benchmark myself against a tire company if I'm in the manufacturing industry, because we have vastly different turnarounds and vastly different products. And, so we need to go with what is common within our industry. So rule number 2 is the one that you would either tattoo this on yourself or onto the wall. If I were allowed to, I did offer to come in and paint the walls of Trade Shield. They said no. But you can compare this against your own terms before you compare this against your sector to say, what did we expect versus what are we getting? And then what should we be getting if that was the sector that we're looking at? So if you trade on a 30-day terms and your DSO is 33 days, you are running a very tight ship, and Martin would be very proud of you. And if you trade on 60-day terms and your DSO is 33, then you somehow have collected earlier than what you were expecting to do, which is lovely. And I'd love to know what that secret is, to say, how did you get that right? But, it's the same number. It's a completely different story. The industry average cannot see what your terms are, but you can see it. So, the rule number 3 over here is your own number from the last quarter is your most honest benchmark. So you can always look and see, what did we do last quarter? What did we do last year in this quarter? And then, we want to go with what is our best. And that's where we want to make our own benchmarks. So because everything else is held at a constant, if your DSOs has come down by 4 days since March, then this is a genuine win for you, because you then said, what did we do last quarter? We've brought it down by 4 days. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but we've already calculated what those 4 days mean when we're looking at a CFO and a financial manager's calculations. what those 4 days actually mean, which is massive. And this is a genuine win. So you're going to be celebrating this. And then, of course, don't stop there. We're going to continue to the next quarter. And so you should say it out loud at your next management meeting. You should be talking about this as well. And we have spoken about communication before, that if you lay it out onto the table, you put out the numbers, then everybody's on the same direction as you. And then the direction in which you travel together is very, very important. And then the caveat on these slides applies to every number I'm about to show you. These are across different industries and different ranges, and they are pulled together from working capital studies, from credit research surveys, and they have heavily weighted towards international data as well. So you can have a look at it as a starting point. And they are useful, and they are, not all of them are South African related to, because sometimes you want to benchmark ourselves against the global market as well. So that is important. And what we can also do, and if you're open to it, is to say, we work with a lot of clients, and if you'd be open to sitting with somebody in your industry and you want us to help facilitate that, we would love to be a part of that. So here is our first table, and this one is the one that everybody wants to see, the typical DSO ranges by sector. Before you find your row and react to that, look at the spread. So 15 days are at the top and 90 days is at the bottom.
Vehicle is at gate.
The sixfold is different, and so here you want to see that almost none of it is about how hard your collections team is working. That's not what it's looking at all. And it's not saying that you're not working hard. It's just looking at what is the benchmark, okay? So it's about the business model. So as a distributor collecting on 30-day terms and a construction contractor waiting on, retention and certification and playing completely different games. As I said, each industry is so different. And if you put the two credit managers side by side and judge them on their DSOs alone, you would fire probably the wrong one if you were looking at them side by side. So it's important to look at the whole picture together. And then look at the right-hand column that we have over here. And because this is where the real information is, construction sits at 60 to 90 days because of retention, but pay when they are paid chains as well. So maybe people who deal with, COD potentially, or even in the construction industry where, maybe they only get paid at the end of a project, or maybe you sell a very large project that actually, a very large what's the word I'm looking for? Like a very large product. And so it's really like a payment plan for one big piece of equipment. And so these are things that you want to have a look at. Yes, Martin.
The one thing that we must remember, in construction, they talk performance-based. So there's performance stages that you perform through when they pay you. And that's why I always say, know your client. Because if you know how the client behaves and how they behave, then you can relate. We spoke about just now how one sale could influence a DSO. It's not the sale that influences the DSO. It's when that sale gets paid that influences the DSO. So if they pay a large sale that is not yet due, it's going to influence your DSO very positively. And it's going to skew the expectations for next month to say, oh, you had a 24-day DSO last month. How can you have a 34-day DSO this month? Exactly the opposite way around. When one large client pays you later than expected because of something, and then again your DSO moves the other way. So all of these things must be taken into consideration when you start benchmarking a DSOs, to say, on average, what should my expectations be according to this graph? This is very powerful information, people. So if you say this is where I'm expecting to come in, I mean, you can say, oh, geez, like the construction industry is 60 to 90 days. I'm in the construction industry and my DSO is 35 days. Okay, but what do? What are you supplying? Where in the supply chain are you to the construction industry, and how critical is your product to the construction industry? That critical part determines the benchmark. So if you're extremely critical, who are they going to pay first? you. And therefore, your DSO is going to be excellent. The next person's is not going to be so critical, and they're going to pay them when they have the money. And then the DSO is going to go up. So that's why what I'm talking about when I say know your client, know the time they take to pay, know their internal processes. All of this determines your benchmark. Thank you, Amy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also some things require a lot more information. In other words, knowing your client, picking up the telephone, which unfortunately, and I can say for my generation, we are email warriors. We pop off an email, we feel like we've got a little bit of a checklist done, and therefore we feel like we've done our job. But actually in our industry, which is in the credit industry, you need to pick up the phone. You need to make sure that you've checked that you've done everything correctly. You need to ensure that the person has received it, because emails get delivered. Maybe they went to spam. Maybe we didn't even have the right email address. That person left. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. And so it's important to pick up the phone and say, Mr. Customer, did I do it correctly? Did you receive it correctly? Can we confirm everything is on track? What is your process for your treasury department? How long does it normally take for invoices to go? Where does it need to get approval? Blah, blah, blah. And we need to then write that down and keep that somewhere so that we know for future references, this is how it's always going to be. And it's every single time we send a statement or an invoice that we need to follow up with a telephone call. So that is how I think you're going to be the most successful, is when you are that guy that isn't afraid of the phone. And I used to be that guy. I was petrified to speak to people. I don't know why. I was even too scared to phone the pizza man and order my own pizza. I used to phone my friend who used to phone for the pizza. I don't know why, but just don't be scared. I haven't yet experienced anyone biting me through the phone, or I haven't actually bitten anyone either. I'm willing to try it. We do have quite a lot of people on the call. I'll give it a try. And then Susan said, and also go visit your big clients. Absolutely. People buy from people. People repeatedly buy from people. And so I agree. It is absolutely vital that you go and meet these people in person, build that relationship, which also means it's much harder for competitors to come in as well, because they know you, they buy from you. They, they have that relationship with you. They also then want to make sure that they pay you because of that personal relationship that happens. And it's just across the board. It's not just with one individual in that company.
Absolutely. Amy, I just want to add something to Susan's comment. So when you go and visit your client, do it in conjunction with sales. They see you then as one person, one company, one business. When you have this silo system where the sales talk one language and credit talks a different language, but when you go as one and you talk to your client, they see, yeah, we can't manipulate. Yeah, we can't play games. These guys talk as one, especially when you deal with those larger clients that has got a huge influence on your collections. We know the 80-20 scenario. Some people is 90-10%. One client has gotten, I just reviewed a balance sheet this morning of a customer. 95% of their sales goes to two clients, two businesses. Okay, it's large companies. But can you imagine 95% of your sales are two clients? Can you imagine if there's something going wrong with those two clients? And pray to God, nothing goes wrong with those two clients, because our economy might be in a problem. But just understand the complexities that you have. So if you don't know how those two guys operate, you will not be successful in your collections. Be as close as possible to your client as you can. Be in their face. They must know everything about you as much as you, as a team, know everything about them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that will never change with whatever technologies we have. Human to human relationships are always best. Yes, technology can help us do things better and make sure that we don't make mistakes. You can put little processes in place that allow you to say, this customer always needs you to have a PO and you cannot send the statement without it. So there are things that technology can help us do, but relationship belongs with people. So on this slide, we're going to say, picture this. There are two different credit managers and they're going to compare notes at a conference or online with Trade Shield on a Thursday. And both of them have DSOs of 55 days. and one goes home feeling absolutely terrible, and the other one goes home feeling fine, happy, So who was the one that was right? Both of them, because one trades on 30-day terms, the other one trades on 60-day terms. Vitally different in terms of what that cost is to the business. So this slide, I want you to take away from here as something that is important. Your DSO is its own. It's, and it's comparing them with your neighbor is meaningless. And the gap between your DSO and your own stated terms is where the information actually lives. So there are some bands. There's 3 bands that we can look at. So if you're sitting within about the 5 days of your terms, so 5 days within your terms, this is a small window of time, and the process is genuinely working. So if people are paying within 5 days, then your process is genuinely working well. Okay. And my advice to you is go and find out exactly why and write down, what is making this a positive impact? What are we doing that is making these customers pay within that period of time? And then, go and have a look at those customers that fall into the next bucket. So the next range is the 5 to 15 days over terms. And this is the most common place that we find majority of our customers sitting. And the good news is that almost entirely flexible inside your own 4 walls with regards to these DSOs. So the gap is usually made up of 3 different things. One is invoices going out late, invoices going out with something wrong on them. And I know Martin has said many a time before that sometimes, most of the time, the issue is we've made a mistake, which is why we're not getting paid. So like missing purchase orders, wrong entity names, wrong VAT numbers, wrong addresses. And so this is something that nobody's picking up unless we're asking for it. And we're only usually asking for it when we're picking up when something is already late. And in which case, now that person is going to say, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Yes, my PO is wrong. And so I'm already 5 to 15 days overdue when you're calling me. And now I'm saying to you, okay, fine, correct the invoice, but my next payment date is only in 2 weeks' time. And so we've missed that window as well. So make sure that we're phoning before the invoices are due. We've got a 30-day window, if those are terms or whatever our terms are. So make sure we're following those rules. So none of them are really difficult conversations as well that you're going to be having with your customers. And so we're making sure that we're not waiting until it is too late. More than 15 days over terms. This is when I would stop looking at your collections team and I would start looking at something more structural that's going on to say, why are customers paying more than 15 days late? What are we doing differently or incorrectly? So either you have not put the right terms in, and that's important, or your customers have been quietly, starting to pay you late because something is happening in their environment. We're not looking at their payment trends. And so it could be that your invoicing accuracy is poor and that a large chunk of your book is now sitting with disputes and or legal handovers. And so we start seeing some other issues starting to crop up depending on where we're sitting. So 3 different types of fixes, but only one really lives within the collection space. And so now we want to put a RAND value onto it because this is how you get your finance director to care and how you're going to impact how your business says everything. So you say you trade on net 30, yet your DSOs are sitting at 63. So that is 33 days of a gap that you need to fix. Okay, so on a 24 million Rand of an annual credit sales, 33 days works out to roughly 2.2 million Rand of your working capital. So that is permanently parked on customers' bank accounts. It's sitting there. And then we also talk about cost of funding, and that's saying that you are now either paying for using your own overdraft and therefore you're paying interest, or you've lost out on interest because that money should have been in your bank account where you could have been earning interest as well. So these are different things that we want to be looking at where cash on hand has a huge amount. How much is sitting in our customer's bank account versus in our own bank account? And one technical term worth knowing, which is best possible DSOs. And we have spoken about this in July as well. And this is where your DSO is calculated as if nothing in your book was overdue. So that could be the benchmark that you're then working towards to say, this is the perfect outcome in the world if we never had any overdues. And so using the current receivables as your benchmark as well. So it shows you, where the floor of your business model actually allows you to go. And the distance between your actual DSOs and your best possible DSOs is quite literally the cash that that is in the process of costing you money. And this is where your finance team's going to start coming in and saying, what are the numbers? Where are we going? And what is the best possible outcome over here?
Amy, just to add something there, Renee has touched on a very, very important point, and that is your debtor or your buyer, whatever you want to call them, their creditors cut-off time. Every company has got a time when they close their creditors, when they say any invoice we receive now, we will only pay it next month.
Absolutely.
So if you don't understand that, that's all part of the KPI. Know your client. If you don't understand what that time frame is and what needs to happen to that invoice before it gets to that cutoff date, when will they capture it to approve it? Who's got to sign it? Who's got to look at it? Who's got to sign off on it? Where does it go? If you don't understand that process, you are going to miss that cutoff every month. And what is going to happen to your DSO? You're going to go up. And who are you going to be? You are going to be the oak that's going to go home crying about your DSO because you're not going to meet the benchmark. Why? Because you don't understand your client. So it's very critical. And one of the easiest things to start managing a DSO better is to understand those kind of things. What is it that my client, my debtor, is expecting of me to supply them, to enable them to pay me on time? Simple things like that. If you start looking at that and you understand that, trust me, an old man, been in this game for many years. I've seen all the tricks in the book. If you think there's 101, trust me, there's far more. They come with new ones every day.
Absolutely. So I do need to speed myself up here. So we want to talk a little bit about CEI, which we spoke about very recently, in the July period. So it should be quite fresh in your mind, which is the Collections Effectiveness Index. And the formula is on the slide, and we've also shared it with you before, which looks quite alarming when you start looking at actual rand values. And/or if you trade in other currencies, you can look at those currencies as well. And so what we want to get you the idea here is, underneath all of this, it's quite simple. On everything that was realistically available for you to collect in this period, what percentage did you actually collect? And that's it. Everything else is, is up for improvement, if you want to call it that. So what did we actually collect? It's even in the sales environment, we can say, what is the pipeline, but what did we actually sign? And when we actually signed it, what did we actually sell? And then what did we actually collect? And that is the number that is the most important. And here is the thing about why this matters more than DSOs, in my opinion, is that DSOs is, a distorted sales volume number. And if you have a bumper month and your credit sales jump up, then your DSOs can fall, while your collections team does absolutely nothing differently. And everybody gets a little bit of a pat on the back because the number, then it moved on its own. But CEI does not do that. CEI only measures what collectibles we actually had against what was collected. So what we promised versus what we actually collected, which of course results in cash in the bank. So your sales team can't accidentally, make your collections team look good or bad. It's the number that says this is where we actually have the money and where we're going to use that money, like to pay your salaries and to pay for our office and lights and water and electricity and tea and coffee and all those things come from your actual collections. So the bands that we're looking at is that 90% and above is like the best in the class. So if you are there, your collection process is not your problem. Then, you know, I mean, this is a compliment if you're in that above 90%. Your remaining risk has then moved upstream, and it's now in the credit granting space. So into who do you say yes to in the first place? And it's not necessarily who have I already said yes to. It's about who we're going to bring on board going forward. 85 to 89 is a strong, and usually means that you have a very mature, disciplined process. In my experience, the gap at this level is almost never a systematic one. It is the 3 or 4 named accounts that everybody in the credit department can recite from memory, which is what we were trying to say. Know your customer, and that is where you want to be going, that everybody knows everything about them as well. Don't gatekeep that information. When we start going into the 70 to 84%, this is where most B2B teams genuinely sit. And I want us to be careful here, because it's easy to hear that we sit here and everybody else sits there, therefore we can relax. Think about that. We want to be at that 80%, and what that 80% actually means. 1 rand for every 5 that you could have collected but didn't. So every single month, that is a lot of money to, describe as satisfactory or that I'm happy with it. So when we're looking at that benchmark, don't just say, oh, but everybody else is there, therefore it's okay for me to be there. Okay. And then, of course, if we're below the 70 mark, then I want to know why with, I would almost go with some urgency. So 3 in every 10 collectible rand walking out the door is not a market condition. This is a problem. This is a process problem, should I say. And the usual suspects are not the structured follow-ups before the due date, or the non-ownership of aging buckets and unallocated, cash sitting in the bank that look exactly the same as the unpaid invoices. We want to make sure that if they match, allocate them. If we need remittance advices, go and get them. So that's important, because you've got the cash, but you can't actually use it. And so that's something we need to know. Absolutely. Susan said that 3 out of 10, it makes it very real. So published cross-industry averages put the middle of the pack between 70 to 85%. So the best in the class is above 90, and that's where we really want to go. And so put your CI in a box, and so start, saying which box do we now fit into? How do we calculate it? And, write it down and discuss it with your team, and be open with them to tell them, where are we currently sitting, team, and where do we want to be sitting? And then how are we going to get their team? What things can we do on a day-to-day basis? And then touch base at the end of the week and say, we did this. What impact did we do? Okay. And now comes the risk number. Okay, so how far have we slipped down? And I want to be upfront about something with this one here. The percentages on this slide are a working rule of thumb. They are not a published sector benchmark by the way of a DSO table. So that's important to know. And there are far less reliable comparative data on aging profiles, especially if you are not with a type like Trade Shield, because we are opening up our Thursday sessions to anyone who'd like to join. And so, treat these as sensible starting points and shapes rather than what the gospel should be, and set your own thresholds in your credit policy, which is a living document that every person in your company should be using on a constant basis. Okay. And then that should also give us an idea when we're talking about KPIs, if it's in our credit policy, we're all aware of what we're working towards, and we're all aware of what we're being judged against. And so that should very much be in that living policy. Okay, so the shape here matters more than the exact figures. Roughly 80% or more of your book should be in current or future due, if you use future due with longer terms. and then sitting within terms. Then it should fall away sharply as you move to the right, and how each bucket each bucket that you roll over should get smaller and smaller or non-existent if that was ever possible past the 60-day or 90-day mark. We also know that the rate of collection decreases the longer or more that they tend to roll over as well. So that is
just one, on that slide, quickly. They must just remember at what time you're looking at that aged analysis. Are you looking at it the first of the month when you've just rolled over, or are you looking at it the last day of the month when you've just closed your aged analysis? Two different times, because certain things have changed in that period, all right? So please be aware of that. And if your terms are from date of statement and terms of date of invoice, once again, two different agings that you're going to look is that you're looking at before you start comparing to benchmark, okay?
Absolutely. And then, of course, Susan said to also consider the industry. Absolutely. It's all about what's happening in your particular sector. So the collections ratio and the hidden KPI, so it's hidden because some people don't always do this. So two numbers on the left, they are two of the likely to be in your monthly pack. Which is a shame because between them, they can tell you more about what next month's, DSO or CSI will be as well. So collection ratios first, cash you collected divided by the overdue balance you opened your month with. Okay, so simple. And the reason I like it is that it resets every month. We get a new opportunity to go and do it all over again, and to do it better every time. So we want to make sure that, I'm not going to give you the benchmark range because, there are there's no credible one that we have. And, as I said before, that's why I'm opening this up to you to say, if you want to sit with similar companies in your industry and you'd be open to doing that, then we can try and see how we can help you. We are actually building something called an industry index, to try and help you do this based on our data. And hashtag that's coming soon. And if you work at Trade Shield in our data science team, I apologize for letting the cat out the bag. But how we really want to do this, we want to track it over a 3-month period, and there you'll find a more stable range very, very quickly. And so that range becomes your benchmark, and then you want to manage it and try to nudge it up as much as possible. So I know that we are running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to therefore jump into the next one, which is your 4 numbers and the one question that everybody needs us to be asking. So by now you should know and have those 4 numbers in front of you. So before we open the floor, I want you to do one thing with them. And hopefully it's only going to take you about 90 seconds. For every number where you sit outside of the range, ask yourself one question. Is this my business model or is this my process? Okay, and that's very different to say, which one is it that we are sitting with over here? And is the process broken or is the model broken? And then we know which one that is. So that is it. And that is the whole exercise that I want you to do. Hopefully it's kind of quick. And the most useful thing I know on how to give you what to do in a benchmarking session that you can hopefully do with your team. So I'm going to open up the floor to everyone over here and say, here's some questions that would prompt us to start asking questions. So if you've got something you'd like to talk about, so which of the 4 numbers surprised you the most when you did this exercise and potentially why? What was the one change that actually moved your DSOs this year? And were you able to, are you still losing days? Do you have disputes or allocations or approval issues? And what your sector is doing about customers pushing to extended terms. And I know, Martin, this is something you're hugely passionate about and have had massive success, if I recall, from a previous company where we went from like 50 odd days to 30 odd days.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm opening up the floor for you, Martin.
While you're thinking about this and you're getting your figures, there's so many low-hanging fruits that you can pick that can change your outcome of your figures. So think about it. Don't be shy. Ask. If you don't ask for advice, if you don't ask for help, you will never get it. But if you do, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have the improvement, you're going to have the reward. And that is what is so satisfying about this. So look at certain things. And if it's your process that is broken, or if it's the system that's broken, or if you don't understand your clients, get to your clients. Like Susan said just now, go out there, walk the floor, understand their process, what happens to your invoice, purchase orders. I can talk for hours on purchase orders and what can go wrong on a purchase order. Purchase order that's not valid anymore. Purchase order that's run out of money. Is it a monthly purchase order? Is it a blanket purchase order? Is it a purchase order per invoice? There are so many different things. And if you don't understand your client's process, it's going to show in your figures. So ask yourself, where am I? What am I doing? What should I be doing? And then all of those things will start falling into place and start giving you answers as to what can you do to improve or even improve further if you're already in a good state. There's always a lacquer to improve further. Trust me. The better your DSO, the more rewarding it feels for you. I mean, there's a lot of hard work. I know I've had blood, sweat, and tears many a month in. But the reward is when you see those results, you say, wow, look at my overdue percentage, look at my collection percentage, look at my DSO. All of these things is rewarding because it's not you that did it, it's your team if you're a credit manager. Now, I mean, the last company I had 13 credit managers. Each one of them had their own portfolio, but it all rolled up to me. And then I was the one that had to go into the board meeting and go and talk to the board and say, this is your results. But it all depended on how we understood our clients. And remember what I said just now, if you go out and see your clients, do it in conjunction with sales. Trust me. It builds a relationship between you and sales, builds a relationship with your client. They see you as one. There's no us and them scenario there.
Absolutely. Does anyone want to unmute and give us either a horror story or a success story or something that would help somebody else on this call that you would find to be helpful and or a successful strategy that you've used? You can just raise your hand and then I'll allow for you to be unmuted. Just so you know, we just mute everyone because sometimes people forget they aren't muted and then somebody walks in like your child or your husband. Or your husband is fine because he brings you tea, but yeah, is there anyone that wants to share with us? Wonderful.
If someone wants to share.
Okay, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you.
You can put your camera on as well, Susan. Susan, come in your camera on, sir.
I don't look my best this morning, so I'll give that one to Skip.
You didn't get the memo to wear a grey jersey like Martin and I.
Exactly. Actually, I've got a grey jersey on.
Oh, hilarious. I love it. Okay.
So two of the biggest challenges, and they possibly fall into the same box, was disputes and the purchase orders form part of that disputes. But the second one was where credit controllers no longer phone. That is the biggest downfall on collections. They think the emails work and they really don't. So when credit controllers start phoning, and when, like Martin, you say, when we go with sales to visit our big clients, look, I know we can't go visit everybody, but the big and sometimes the problematic clients, it makes all the difference in the world. When I worked for Johnson Crane Hire, I started there, their disputes were sitting at 15 million rand.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay, it took a couple of months, but we had to actually put systems and procedures in place on how to resolve those disputes. If those systems aren't in place and you don't have anywhere to take it further, take it to the next step, take it to the manager, and eventually to EXCO if it's not resolved, that can cost you millions and millions. So strategies for disputes is big, because if you're phoning your clients, you're vetting them properly, you're phoning them, you're visiting them, and you don't have disputes, you will get paid. So I think the disputes is a big thing, and relationship building. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Susan, you are so 100% correct. I mean, I consulted for a company, and they had one of their clients, just one of their clients, with 57 million was under query. And it was all because the client didn't understand the pricing. There was an article with a name on it, but that article had 4 or 5 different ones with the same name. And each one of those articles had a different price. And they assumed it to all be the same. And they claimed a credit, but they took the highest value as the credit that they claimed. And that was the dispute. I sat down with them and I said, what is this? What is that? I said, you misunderstanding. Those are for that price, those are for this, those are for that, and that's why you got the credit for that value. I said, oh, thank you very much. Paid the 57 million. And I looked like Moses. I just parted the Red Sea. And all I did is I just sat down with the client, listened to what they said, understood what their perception was, and then took perception and turn it into fact. And then pops your uncle. But you must sit down with your client and listen to what they say so that you can understand the perception that they have about that query. If you don't understand it, you're going to miss it. Guys, I'm going to ask Amy as well now. If you feel that this floor is a little bit too on the spot and you don't want to come and stand here and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm an alcoholic, and and you don't feel that that's what you want to do, feel free. Contact us.
Yeah.
We'll keep it all confidential. Remember, we are here to make your business a success. Because if you're a success, we're a success. So
Absolutely.
if you want to sit down with us, talk about it, and help us establish where your issues are, we can guide you, we can give you some advice, and then we can work from there and make you more successful.
Absolutely. I will put the support mailbox email address into the chat. And so you can get a hold of us. You can direct it directly to one of us, and one of the support agents will pass it on. It's just easier to have one email address as opposed to mine and Martin's and Neil's and whoever else needs to get a hold of us. But we're also, you've got your account managers. If you are with TradeShield, reach out to those account managers. If you're not with TradeShield, you can reach out to us as well. And we're happy to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a sales discussion. It can be just a discussion where credit people just touch base with other credit people. And so that is vitally important. I did pop up a poll for you, so if you'd like to rate us for this session, but we still have 3 more minutes. If anybody else would like to give us a horror story or a success story, we would be happy to do that. I know there was a client of ours, Martin, I won't mention their name, who increased their debtors book and reduced their DSOs. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Mm.
Do you remember those numbers?
It's huge numbers.
It was
I'm
huge.
talking about the ledger increased by approximately 800 million.
Right.
And you know what my thought for today was? Just pure fluke. Comparison without perspective robs you of self-belief.
I like it.
So don't compare yourself without having a complete perspective of what it is that you're doing. Why am I comparing myself with this figure? Because it will just rob you and it will make you feel so down about yourself. So understand, like Susan said also, which industry are you in? Or was it Renee that said it? Well, I think it was Renee. Which industry are you in? That industry also very much dictate. And where are you? Where are you based? Are you in Natal? Are you in Western Province? Are you in Northern Transvaal or whatever they call them now, Limpopo? Or are you in Mpumalanga? What is it that you do and where are you doing that? That plays a massive role in the benchmarking world as well.
Absolutely. So we have 1 minute to spare, and we'll leave you there, and we'll hopefully see you next week on Thursday as well to start the next portion of our series within August. And we hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the last second day of July, because there's one more day tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.
As always, great work, Amy. Brilliantly presented.
Thanks,
Well
Mark.
put together.
Just hang on for a